a climate change event organized by Fran Brady, and that drew, I'd say 80 to 100 people to hear a wonderful lecture about not only about the negative aspects of climate change, but a message of hope that we can actually do something to mitigate what's going on. So I think it was a very successful event.
And I would just like to add, I want to urge all of you to take a look at the planning and zoning meeting on Thursday. First of all, I think Carol Snow has really stepped up and she did a really nice job as chairman running the meeting. And Erin Mannix, I don't know if she's on tonight. I just thought she was well prepared. It was, it got testy a little bit. The topic was, and really only topic was the Cottage Road housing. And, there are some safety concerns over there. I think we've received letters about water flooding in Cottage Road. So it wasn't unanimous on what they were thinking. It was a robust conversation, a lot of passion, but I think we're very fortunate. The only bad part was there was only four people to vote. And I know we're both working on that. But the meeting was long. I give them a lot of credit. But the members there were Elliot Hitchcock, Ron Brodixton, and I can't remember his last name, was the new appointee of ours, John Durst. So I got to look at that. And of course, Carol Snow. But I want to commend Erin Mannix. I thought, if there's a lot to it. Bottom line is the 830G is frustrating. But, Erin's come on board with knowing this is the law and this is what we have to do. And I know it gets frustrating sometimes, but the one comment that was
made. Did it pass, Noreen? Just sorry to interrupt. Did it pass?
Sorry, it did pass.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
3-1 to pass. It really was 2-2, the first vote, Scott. So it was going to go down. But what they just put something in there. It doesn't have a lot of weight, but saying that they really want the developers to work with the town with that potential flooding problem. That was the big one. But anyway, if you have a chance, watch part of it. One of the things we're dealing with is when you deal with all the issues with affordable housing, one of the things they said a couple times was that, well, we don't love all this, we don't love all this, but the fact is we have a need for affordable housing. It's almost like it's giving them, or not giving them, almost pushing on them an out for some of their common sense type things because of we need affordable housing and we've identified that. So that's an interesting conversation on how we approach that as a town. But anyway, I just wanted to commend the staff and the commissioners. I mean, it got passionate. I think the Tosha stepped on a little bit, but it was difference of opinion. And but overall, I was impressed. Long meeting, but worth taking a look at.
I have no updates tonight. Tonight is both Board of Ed and Madison Youth and Family Services, so I got the double dipper tonight.
Just a brief update on the ad hoc marijuana committee. We have taken an extended summer hiatus, but we'll be getting back together. Really, the path is to bring a referendum question, I think probably with the budget referendum, going to make the most sense. There was never a pathway that was going to get us onto the general election ballot, right? It's just too crowded. So we were never working towards that timeline. And I think in talking to people in town and our conversations on the committee, this is a question that we think we want to have residents weigh in on, whether we allow or not retail facilities and manufacturing facilities in town. I will add that I was contacted by one license holder who had an interest in opening a retail facility in Madison. So my educated guess is that should the town approve it, there probably would be interest from retailers to open up in Madison. So,
Bruce,
Is there anything preventing them right now from opening up?
yeah, so there's a planning and
Right.
zoning moratorium, and likely.
When does that lapse?
Well,
You know?
it lapses this year at the end of the year. They're going to have to renew that, which they can do. And I'll make sure that I connect with Aaron and that we are on the same page with that. But I think, we'll want to extend that out at least through a timeline that works for the referendum, for the budget referendum.
Bruce, has there been a change that allows more than, because isn't this just about one, or did they change?
So-
Have more than one? I'm
so-
trying to remember.
Yeah, so when the law was originally passed, it was a population-based density. So towns with 25,000 or less, you could have one establishment for every 25,000 people. Subsequent to the original passing of the law, it was amended, and the amendment passed that they lifted that. So now, in theory, a town can have as many as it wants. So the referendum question, which we'll be crafting, will have to be: do we want 0 or 1 or 2 or whatever? We're going to have to come up with what we think is the best question.
And have other towns done referendums? It's funny how there was a flurry, leading up to this, and then there's been like very little public dialogue on this in the last year. So just curious, are other towns doing the referendum path?
So I think it's a mix. Some towns are taking action through planning and zoning. Some are just passing it, I believe, through ordinance. Brantford is allowing it. Guilford is not landed yet. Clinton
Allowing one or multiple?
They're allowing establishments. I don't know exactly how many. Clinton has put a permanent prohibition in place. I think the next community up the shoreline is Saybrook that's allowing it. And I don't believe they've done it through referendum. I think they've taken action through ordinance or planning and zoning regulation.
Okay.
So we don't have to go to referendum. That's not a mandatory pathway. It's just the one that feels the most genuine to me right now.
Okay, great. Well, I guess, and you'll coordinate about the P and Z, because I that's why I was kind of thinking we should get things moving again, and then we'll talk about I guess your commission will make a recommendation, then your board will then say, this is the
So
path.
I think that's going to be the conversation for us to take up what does the question look like? Is it a question that is 0 establishments? And then should that be defeated, we would then have to take up, we would take that as the community would like to have an establishment, and then we can take up that question. Or do we just say, do we want to have 1 or 2? I can't imagine anybody's going to have an appetite for much more than that, and see if that passes or gets defeated. So I think it's just how is the question crafted to best discern what the community wants.
Okay, great. Any other updates? That's everybody good? All right, moving on to citizens' comments. Jacqueline, are there any citizens' comments?
Yes, Lori Schroeder.
Okay,
Good morning. It's actually Kevin Schroeder of Johnson Lane on Lori's computer. I noticed on the agenda that there was an item for resignations and appointments. And I see that Mr. Woody Weiss is mentioned on the agenda, and I can only assume that that's a resignation. And in my humble opinion, that's 3 years too late. And I'll remind the board and the citizens that in October of 2019, the town of Madison and its energy committee chaired by Mr. Weiss was the subject of numerous articles in the New Haven Register and the Source over a solar project. And it was acknowledged by Mr. Weiss that he was profiting personally and I'm quoting from the October 30th article, when he acknowledged profiting personally from solar projects for which he was the chairperson, but said, and I quote, that the money that he earned was less than his conventional investments. In other words, I have for 3 years been waiting for the Board of Selectmen to ask Mr. Weiss to resign. And I honestly think that it's high time that the town of Madison claw back the money that Mr. Weiss continues to make off of solar projects in the town of Madison. I greatly appreciate the volunteerism in Madison from members of the Board of Selectmen and the other commissions. But this case of solar and Mr. Weiss's involvement, I believe, will go down in the same sort of black mark as policemen stealing lobsters from the fishtail, or, for example, policemen engaging with prostitutes in the parking lot. I was thrilled to see that he's resigning, if my assumptions are correct.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, this is a resignation. Any other public comment?
Oh, I think we're good.
Okay, moving on to item number 1 under business, our consent agenda. I guess can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in the published agenda for the Board of Selectmen?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? So wait for Noreen. Oh, yeah. Okay, any further discussion on the consent agenda? I do want to highlight the proclamations, which I think are important to bring to the attention of the public, that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month as well as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And then also to thank all our public servants who volunteer, who are being appointed, or who have resigned. And with that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Motion passes. Okay, item number 2 is an update from the Beach and Rec Director, Austin Hall. I thought it was helpful to get an update on what he's been working on, as well as just some recent discussions that, for the Beach and Rec Commission. So we'll welcome up Austin, who I just want to say, what a great summer. I know it was a very busy, beautiful weather this summer. And I think generally everything went really smoothly, and I give you a lot of credit for that, Austin. So you did a phenomenal job this summer. It was just a really good, no crises, no, you know, maybe I'm a little tilted because my first summer on this job was summer 2020, but nonetheless, it was a job well done. So with that, I will turn it over to Austin.
Thanks. So I agree, it was a good summer, but a lot of people involved with that, a lot of great staffing. So really happy with the way it went. So just wanted to go over some of the projects we have ongoing that'll be starting shortly. So tonight we go to ACA for the first approval of the dog park, and then on to planning and zoning, if approved, on the 20th. And then we hope, if all goes well, to have the fencing installed 3 weeks after that. And then, you know, have a grand opening sometime late November, mid-November. I met with a Girl Scout troop last week who are really interested in doing benches and signage for the dog park. So we have some great community volunteers that will be doing their silver award projects, helping us out with that. So it'll be exciting to get that done, and you know, have a place for folks to bring their dogs to socialize right here in town. Next project we have ongoing right now is renovations to the Bauer Farmhouse. So we just did a hazardous building materials report that we just got back over the weekend. So we need to review that, and that'll help us how we're going to move forward with interior and exterior work. I think the plan will be to make the exterior presentable and do what we can inside for phase 1, and then move on to phase 2 later on. Bathrooms. This is a very important project, both at West Wharf, East Wharf, and Rockland. We have money that was designated through ARPA, and the main project will be the West Wharf bathroom, and we hope to have that, or will have that, done by Memorial Day. And then East is more of a renovation than a new thing, and Rockland will be following up after that. Bathroom up at the Route 79 parking lot. If you've been down to Surf Club out towards Garden Point, we have stairs that lead down to the beach at the far end of Surf Club Beach. When those stairs were put in, I think 5 or 8 years ago, the tides weren't as high, and now the high tide goes right up to the steps, and they're inaccessible, and the tide is washing out the sand at that area. So after the tide recedes, the stairs aren't usable. So we're going to have some engineers and contractors come out to look at that and make recommendations on how we can change the layout. More than likely will be stairs going down and then an exit to the left instead of straight ahead. It's just the water gets too high there, but it's a place that people use frequently, so we have to make it right. 2 other projects which are sort of tied together, Academy Playground and Surf Club Playground. We have plans and drawings, got some quotes. It is on a state contract, so there'll be no need to go out to bid. So I'm actually sharing the drawings with someone in town who is deeply involved in disability rights and allowing access to everybody to playground. So we just want to make sure that the design allows the most use by the most people in town, and we'll have by Memorial Day the Surf Club Playground will be done, and will for sure be done, and hopefully the Academy Playground as well. Exchange Field, that was a project that we've been working on this summer, and we just got the report back from Field Turf, who did a study to show us what we need to do to regain and recapture the field that's over on Exchange. So we just got that report back again on, I think it was Friday. So we're going to review that, and then we'll be ready to go out to bid for making those changes and be ready to go for late spring, early summer. Last project I'll talk about, the town campus gym floor. If you've been there over the last year, there's some bubbles on the floor, more than likely due to some flooding that was there about 5 years ago. So there's a couple dozen or so bubbles that need to be extracted and re-glued down. We had to wait till now to do that because it's so humid in the gym, so we can't do that over the summer. So all the pre-work's been done, so in the next couple of weeks that'll take place, and it should just be a few days of shutdown of the gym, and then we'll be back to good. And I just wanted to bring up, this weekend's a busy weekend in town coming up. So Saturday we have 2 events going on. We have the Bauer Harvest Festival from 11 to 3 at Bauer Park, and the Rockland Native Pollinator Planting Fest is also on Saturday from 9 to 2. So I'd love to have people go and check those things out. This is the annual Harvest Festival. It's always a huge turnout, and the weather's supposed to be fantastic on Saturday. So we're looking forward to a great weekend and a lot of participation from everybody in town. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has about anything I talked about or otherwise.
Amazing work, Austin. I have to give Austin and his team a ton of credit in the sense that, so I sort of troll social media sometimes, and people then tend to find me and complain and tell me things that are wrong in town. And I'll text Austin a little tidbit of something, and 9 times out of 10, he either already knows about it or he's already on it, and his team has already fixed it. So, beyond appreciative of the work that these guys do each and every day to make our town beautiful. It's just beyond impressive. So thank you, Austin and the team.
I'd like to add my 2 cents to that. I troll the beach on my bicycle, and things seem to be very well organized and managed. And Austin, it's always interesting to me to see you sometimes out helping to manage the traffic down at Surf Club. That's always very impressive. Austin, I had one question. If I heard you correctly, you are moving ahead with the Academy Playground. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir.
I have no idea whether there's any prudence in waiting to see just how the Academy Building Committee and Design Committee come forward, and whether there's anything they might come forward with which might cause us to think differently about the playground or its location. It's technically not part of the Academy Street School, and yet that whole complex down there, there might be some merit in the kind of the design and the flow down there. So I just don't want to get out of sequence here. I'm wondering, the timeline for the Academy Playground is to move immediately on it?
We can move immediately. If we don't move forward with it, there's some maintenance we would have to do to the surface and some of the areas of the playground, which we can do. But I just thought rather than do that, to replace it at this time would be, just as expensive or inexpensive to do that. But if we want to wait for Academy to get a little further along in the process, we can. But I would have to do some maintenance and upkeep projects to it.
And so I think, I just want to remind that was a project funded by ARPA. And so there is a little bit stricter timeline in terms of completing the project, although I guess we have till 2026 technically. And I know Austin and I talked about this at one point, that if there were a change in the whole site plan, and that's not what the Academy Committee is contemplating right now, but if there was a desire to put the playground somehow more close, to the school, the equipment would all be removable, right? So yes, you are kind of, the site work would have to be redone because it'd be redone at a different location, but the actual playground materials and things like that would be removable. So, so that's at least a benefit there. If there was some decision, that fixed cost would be able to be transferred somewhere else.
That's helpful, Peggy. Austin, I wanted to also ask you what the status is of the, I don't know whether it's called the water park or the splash pool. Where is that in the pipeline?
So that would have to, I think that's prudent to wait for Academy to get further along, because that's a location that needs to be determined. And if it goes in a parking lot area or an area that's going to be used for parking, I think taking that up would be an extraordinary project to do. So waiting, I think, a little longer until we have a firm drawing of the layout of Academy would be helpful with that.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Austin too also. And also, this is great you coming in and giving a review of the summer. Thank you for doing that. One of the things I wanted to ask about was the playground is what I didn't realize we were thinking of moving the playground. I knew we were, and if there's safety issues, we do need to move on it, obviously. But also I know, I know they call it Academy Playground, but a lot of people don't call that. They think it's Madison's playground. It's really a community playground. And it's also situated where we do not have to worry about those ball fields, which I think is a really important. Their younger siblings are playing on the bars and stuff, while their brothers and sisters are playing softball and baseball. So I'm just wondering why we would consider moving it. Do we need something else in that place, or are we moving the fields, or why is that considered?
No, and this is something that has just been general conversations, Noreen, about they haven't finalized the design of the building. Okay, so the committee, what if they changed where the main entrance was, for example, and that would require maybe a change in terms of how the parking lot is configured. So would there be, some sort of reconfiguration there? There's no plan in place or anything, but it was more like, do we keep our options open until they finalize the design of the building? The current way the plan is, there wouldn't be any impact, but there's a whole design, they just hired the owner's rep, but they still have to hire an architect and then confirm the final design of the building is all. So until you really know where those entrances and everything are going to be, the way the parking lot is going to work could change. That's all.
Well, that makes sense. So these safety concerns, I'm saying, you didn't use the word safety, I did, but maintenance, is it a lot of money? I know we need to do it, whether or not we're going to wait.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't exactly know how much it's going to be, but we need to replace the surface at Academy. So replacing that with rubber mulch. That alone could get us to when we need to make a move and replace the whole thing. Surf Club, the surface is what it is. It's the sand,
Right.
and it's fine. But it's the aging of the surf. Both playgrounds are aged out. It's tough, especially at the Surf Club. Everything rusts, and
Yeah.
There's newer products that prevent that from happening. So I think it'll be helpful to replace and then get on, like a schedule to replace the nuts and bolts before things get rusty, because down here the salt air just destroys everything.
Everything. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I know that also the Beach and Rec Commission had discussed a little bit about policies for next summer in terms of fees and, and also my understanding is they're kind of going status quo on the fees. Again, parking fees. There'll be some modifications that they'll recommend to us at one point on the policies, just because of some of the grant restraints that we're going to have for next summer. But overall, I think they're not looking to make any major changes to the beach pass system this year. So status quo. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. I appreciate that, Austin. I know he's got a long list and he's chipping away at it. So, and I know people are eager for the dog park. I've gotten inquiries. Just so you understand, this isn't the department, it's more the process of, anytime we make changes like this to town property, we're no different than citizens in that we have to go through the approval process with land use. And so that just takes some time. So, and I noticed that the pavilion at Salt Meadow is up, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's been up since, it must have been like April, maybe. That was
Yeah.
it.
And that went through a long approval process.
Yeah.
And then the bathroom situation is where we're trying to work through what's going to be the most optimal there, as well as at West Wharf. There had been talk about waterless systems. And I think now in talking to the health department and just looking at the soil samples, it may go back to a traditional system. So At least I know that at West Wharf, that might be the case. So they're working through it. But it's definitely on the list to get, moving forward soon. I know people are really eager, especially at West Wharf, to have a functioning bathroom rather than porta potty. So we're hoping that's going to happen soon.
May I just add one more question? Sorry to do this to you, Austin. With your other hat on, do you think down the road you could just give us an idea on the plan for the cafeteria at the senior center? The seniors, it appears, really are not comfortable coming back yet after the pandemic. It's amazing how long it's taking, but at least it appears that way to me.
Yeah, so I could talk about that now. It could take just a minute. So we've definitely seen a lower turnout in the cafe and an increased turnout in Meals on Wheels. But over the last couple of months, we've seen a greater turnout in the cafe. So I think things are turning around. We are short one person in the cafe. So we are limiting the numbers just because I don't have enough staff to serve, more than 20, 25 a day. We've been looking for that person for a year now, and we're just not getting the applicants that would be a good fit. We did put the job out again and received a couple of applicants last week. So we'll be interviewing them. But I think we've made the turn and people are coming back, but we've been open for a year now, and we started out slowly and people were, slowly coming back, and now, we're getting to that 20, 25 number every day. But it's still, it's not where it was before, for sure.
Austin, what was it before pandemic?
We're, 30 to 60 every day. That was, we were full. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's maximum?
60 is the max that we could have in there. Will we reach that again? That's to be determined. But I think we're at a number now that we're comfortable with the staffing that we have. And once we could get that additional person in, it opens it up a little bit more.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, I think with that, then we will move on to item number 3. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Austin.
And actually, Austin, if you could hang on, if you can hear me, just for the discussion later on the senior tax relief next steps, I should have put it right after you, but if you could hang on for that, that would be great. So moving on to item number 3, discuss and take action to award the bid for locker replacement at Polson Middle School to CSNE LLC in the amount of $173,300, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. This is one of the project that's been in CIP, which I think that needs to be put in the motion again. I think we keep getting to do that, but and I don't know if any questions for Bill McMinn. I'm not sure if he's here on this, but this is in CIP, and it's well needed, as my 8th grade daughter reminds me how bad the lockers are. So
There he is.
yeah,
Hey, Billy.
Bill, this was a CIP project, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So that is just,
And it went through its 5-year run, I believe, right? Through
Yeah.
CIP.
Yes.
yep. Any questions on this? It's amazing how much it costs to replace lockers.
There are a lot of them.
There are. Okay.
Exciting.
If no questions, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Great. And Bill, if you want to stay on for a second for the next one, because this is something that, you actually won't be living with that long. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve a charge for an ad hoc town facilities committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great discussion, and I'll put this up. You received, we talked about this. Oh boy, that's not what I want. Share at our Why is this doing this?
Mhm.
Can you
Oops,
see
we see it.
you see it?
Yeah, you just got to do the, that.
Presentation view.
Okay, great, okay. So our last conversation was just clarifying how this was with CIP, and we talked about this as a strategic thing. So, but I wanted to just clear that, CIP will be getting this information, and they may want to ask the committee to weigh in when they're reviewing projects, but this is primarily because the language up above is about strategic decisions. It's not getting into routine maintenance decisions. And then I did talk to the superintendent about having a member of the Board of Education on this, and I think it does make a lot of sense. He felt it was and was consulting with his board, just because there's so much overlap, and especially with, this is an ad hoc, so maybe when we make this permanent, we might not need that, but given there's just a lot of balls in the air with school and town properties right now, it's better to have a Board of Ed person there on the committee. So these were the changes I made. If there was some other language that you think would be more helpful, we can make it now. No?
I think it's
Okay.
great.
Do we anticipate with the formation of this committee that we press the pause button on any existing CIP projects?
Well, we have in CIP, we have pushed out, any kind of renovations and things like that to things that are part of that, just kind of like what we had done with the schools. So we're just focusing on bare minimum kind of stuff. Like there was some money in there actually for Youth and Family Services building. Obviously that's going to get pushed out. So we went through.
This committee's more strategic too, right? Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
more sort of master planning and sort of, roadmap for long term as opposed to blocking and tackling in the CIP.
Yeah, but I think to Bruce's point, which I think is a good one, we don't want to, go forward with putting new windows in and then,
Right.
and then closing or selling off or tearing down the building.
Right.
But sometimes you just have to make the call, right? Bill, a question I have for you is to do a master plan, when you had coordinated with that working group before, did you guys actually go out to get a bid for a master plan, or did it just I know you redirected a little bit and focused on emergency shelter and other things.
Yeah, we had DRA helping us with the plan. I believe it was DRA, and they, specifically, we spent a lot of time on the shelter. And the committee we had professional services helping and evaluating and comparing. They have the depth to compare other towns and other, services. Say for the shelter was a perfect example. They had the resources to tell us and help us, what other shelters are, what are the standards for shelters of a town this size. So if you're going to look at use of facilities, the shelter was perfect example.
Okay.
So they definitely were helpful. They definitely, are third party, professional, unbiased, giving you condition assessment. And the best part is they also say, what's reasonable space for Bill McMinn's office, who does a facility stuff, that's always a good perspective because my office is never big enough, you know what I mean? But, really in the standard, it's plenty big enough. So that's always a good comparison. What's the standard for an office space or this kind of use?
Right. Okay. And that's something that the committee then will consider about any advisory work that we would want. I mean, the good thing is if we're moving forward on the strategic plan, there'll be some kind of overarching themes of what the community wants to help feed into this committee. And then maybe as we move forward, after this becomes permanent, we don't have members of the board, elected boards on it, and that's something we can talk about. So that we get more of a group of people that have a lot of expertise in this area, just permanently on it. But all right.
To that point, Peggy, the Selectmen, Board of Finance and Board of Ed liaisons that we're currently identifying, are we going to double up and ask the liaisons to the CIP to also be the liaisons to this, or do we want to deliberately use a different selectman, a different Board of Finance member, and a different Board of Education member?
Good question. I mean, I think that, you know, because ARPA will probably be winding down more over the next couple of months, you know, as some decisions are made on larger projects. And that would free up, I think, the CIP people who we kind of strategically made that decision before, right, to have overlap. I think it's a question for the board. It makes sense. And this is only requiring one versus two. So this could kind of be, they roll on from ARPA to this. Scott, wait, no, Al, you and Noreen, right? Noreen and Al, you're on ARPA right now, and you're the CIP people as well, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So that seems to make a lot of sense. But so I guess it's, you know, I don't know if anybody has strong views, and we can maybe talk about that at a next meeting about who we want to appoint.
Okay, that's fine.
That's good.
I haven't really thought much about it. All right, well, with that, then I guess all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay,
Aye.
great. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bill, for your hard work. I think the good thing is this will also give, you know, help you out with some of these guiding, you know, guiding issues that we often talk about with some decisions we have to make. So you've got this other committee now as a resource, but not that you need another committee, Bill.
Happy to help.
All right. All right, great. So next item on the agenda is discuss process to update floodplain ordinance. This has been on the list for a while. And, you know, we've been working through a lot of different things now, but I feel like we really need to move this
Peggy, you
forward.
missed tax relief, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes, discuss creation of working group for senior tax relief programs. This is a follow-up to our presentation that Austin had done last month. I did speak to the Board of Finance about this. They are supportive of creating the working group, a joint working group, rather than, and they've already appointed two of their members a while back to focus on the senior tax freeze program. Because if you recall, some programs require Board of Selectmen review, some programs require Board of Finance review. So this is kind of a way to together look at all the programs. And this would be just board members working with town staff. So this is not a committee or anything like this. And they've done a lot of work on this already, the staff. They have really specific targeted recommendations. I think it's now having them come forward with some factual information, some recommendations, and having some, you know, the working group come together on some policy points and then making recommendation changes. So I guess the question is, they're going to have two people on. Do we need two, or do we just put one Board of Selectmen member? And then we would have, as part of that team, Austin and Heather, and I guess our assessor. We'll have to figure out the staff members. Right now, it's quite a big group. Austin, who's on our working group again? I mean, there was a lot of.
Sorry. The assessor, tax collector, Heather, myself,
Stacy was on that too, right?
Stacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's everybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I was part of the working group. I mean, we could continue where I just continue working with them, and then we add the Board of Finance people in, or if there's a board member here that wants to join that, we can do that as well. So we have two Board of Selectmen members, or I swap out and one other Board of Selectmen person comes on. So I know there's a lot of committees going on and people have time constraints. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are. They're going to have two members from the Board of Finance, and I think it's Justin and John Picard.
You have a sense of how frequently they're meeting?
Well, we haven't had any meetings. Internally, we've had two with the staff, me and the staff on this. And the staff has done a lot of work. This has been on their radar for a year now. So the Board of Finance has not met at all, I don't think, yet. So they haven't done, I think Fillmore, or no, it was Fillmore and, yeah, Fillmore and Picard, right? So the, like, elected people have not been that involved in this yet.
Peggy, it sounds like the most of this meeting will be reviewing and working with staff with the recommendations. The last time we did this, we were establishing a new program. It was a little different, but that sounds like to me, is that correct?
Yes.
So it doesn't seem like it'd be a huge commitment. You know, one of the things, and I'm fine with the way this is set up, that I've noticed while I've been away is we have taken so many of our committees and filled them with elected officials. And I'm not talking about just volunteers, I'm talking about commission members. For instance, this senior tax relief, you have a senior commission. And when I look at some of the members, I feel like they're almost looking for a project. And it all falls on Austin and Heather. And I think that's in other departments too. So I think in the future, we could look, you know, if you're going to sign up to be a commission member, you want to know you're doing something. And I just think I find the meetings used to be much more active, back and forth and everything, because those commission members, Beach and Rec, seniors, whatever, were more involved. And we just kind of over the years changed the way we do this with making it very heavily run by elected officials. With the ARPA group, we have some strong, well, one in particular, Al picked and of course he got me involved, I picked a chairman who is not an elected official. And I think that's made the committee better. And I just, hopefully in the future, we can look at more of that. I think people that want to serve on committee, I've had people quit commissions because they feel like they're not doing anything. They're an advocacy group. And I think we got to get back a little bit. And we got so much talent out there.
So I think that there's a difference between an ad hoc on specific issues versus a permanent commission. And we don't have elected officials on permanent commissions. If the senior commission, I think that's a great, you know, you want to turn this over to the senior commission. The problem is that this is I think the purpose of having this working group for this issue is that you have to have the elected officials and really involved in the decision-making process. It's very complicated. And that's where we thought having a working group would make sense. ARPA, a lot of towns don't even have committees for ARPA. Okay, so it's I mean, you know, it was all driven out of the first selectman's office, or it was driven by the Board of Selectmen. So ARPA was trying to be a hybrid of that, where we have public input, but we also have buy-in from what we already have is a very good capital planning process, which some towns don't have either. So I think that was unique. That's why I was saying the ad hoc facilities, we can make it all public, but it's an ad hoc board right now. And the idea was we got a lot of big strategic issues on properties that we have to deal with. It's going to transition to a permanent committee, and that's where you're going to have people from the public, I think, start getting more involved. So,
you know, Peggy, I understand that. That's in the beginning. This senior tax relief, it really is coming from the staff, and as it should. They've been dealing with. So that's great. But I think going down the road, I'm not talking about total. But
but I'm asking is, are you making a recommendation though that the senior commission then take this up first and then come to us? I mean, it's not a bad suggestion. I'm just asking what you're.
No, I'm not, Peggy, because I think we're farther along than that. I think we're far. I think staff's really ready to move with this and move with it. But in the future, if instead of Austin and Heather, it be or they're designate, I just think we think in terms of that, of putting our commission members, and maybe this is a subject outside of this one tax relief group, obviously. I just think we should start thinking about that, because I think people really do, if they volunteer to be on something, they want to know they're, you know, they're contributing. That's all. But I'm fine the way this is going with. I think you're pretty far along. It sounds like.
Okay, so, but I guess it gets back to the question though, of what I'm asking of the board is how, do we just want to have one member from the Board of Selectmen, two members of the Board of Finance to join in on the next couple of meetings with the staff? And I can either be that person or I can appoint, somebody else can be that person. I'm just looking at efficiency.
Yeah, I'm the liaison to senior citizens. I'd be
Okay.
happy to be that person.
Okay. So, so we'll have one member of the Board of Selectmen, and then Board of Finance has two, and then the staff team. That makes sense? Okay. All right, great. And they have done a lot of work because, like, as you pointed out, Noreen, they've been kind of living and breathing it, a lot of the administrative stuff. But there is some bigger picture policy things that we are going to have to talk about what we want to do here. Because of the kind of structure of the program. So, okay. So, with that, we'll move on, and, that group can kind of get organized. And I think some of the staff members would rotate off once tax collector doesn't really need to be there in every conversation, but, or the assessor, but they're more experts in certain things that impact seniors that need to be brought in. So, next item is discuss process to update floodplain ordinance. Where is the floodplain ordinance? Go back. All right, back to there we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So this was obviously a big topic last year. The Coastal Resiliency Commission had done a tremendous amount of work and come back with kind of a draft proposal. Our board and the public, got very involved in this, and we had a lot of good, I think, feedback from the public. And I think now it's time to kind of take a step back and kind of move forward again on this. And just because we kind of need to do it, and the timing is actually really good because there is some regulatory changes that require us to, where our floodplain ordinance is out of date. We also need to look at the charge for the Coastal Resiliency Commission. The state passed something that actually gives them some sort of option to become a regulatory body. So we're going to be talking about that. And I've kind of held off a little bit until we after the charter, because the charter passes, we're going to have to redo the charges and ordinance certain commissions anyway. So the idea was, let's look at their charge, let's look at our ordinance, and kind of put these two together. So that's why we held off a little bit. And so I think now is the time. And just wanted to, also a while back had kind of passed this off to town staff, to really take a deep dive into it. And they to both Vinny's credit, because he really spent quite a bit of time kind of earlier in the summer, as well as Erin, who was not on board when we reviewed this last year. I think she came in after the floodplain ordinance kind of just started to move forward. And then John Anako is our town engineer. So they actually did focus on doing a markup of the document. They looked at the coastal resiliency proposal, which was great and had a lot of things in it. They also looked at the state model. And then they looked at what other towns are doing. And so they've come up with kind of a revised draft. But obviously there's a couple of key policy hot button issues that the board just has to make decisions on. And so what I thought we could do is have a special meeting just to kind of go through this, start out with the big picture. Why do we need this? Refresh the public, refresh ourselves, why this is important, why it's needed to be updated. And then walk through what are more regulatory, verbiage and things like that the staff came up with. And then there's a couple of brackets in there about the policy issues, which, just reflecting on what we had debated about a year ago, includes things like the look back period. And when do you implement that? Do you change it? the base flood elevation requirements, you know, and where you implement those. Like this is that BFE +1 versus +2. And then some of the substantial improvement and cost evaluations, those types of things, which I think you can really boil down to just a couple of issues that the board would have to kind of debate and make a decision. And Sam is here because Sam has worked with staff and, you know, he's kind of helping them pull it all together. We have a lot of cooks right now, and so he's kind of pulling it all together and making sure that the final draft is consistent, working with the staff members. And they've all worked really hard on this. And then I think we just have to make some, you know, decisions on the policy stuff. So that was my thought, is having, you know, so we'd have a special meeting, review the changes, debate about the policy issues, and then we would come back with a, you know, an ordinance, and then where we would then do a public hearing and then finalize it. So I think having looked at what happened recently in Florida is just a good reminder of how important this is. And that it just elevates the critical need for us to be aware of what's happening with climate change and that the impact that hurricanes can have on communities, which was quite stunning to see some of the images down there. So Sam, I don't know if you have anything else to add to this right now. I know.
I just didn't know if, so all the comments or recommendations that, you know, the staff put in, you know, the 4 or 5 things is the cost, and the market value, whether or not we do offer the ability to have a third party, you know, appraisal on the cost or on the market value. And that would, you know, would require us to probably do an RFP each year to have a list of appraisers on board so they could select one of them. And then the big thing, I guess, is the lookup, you know, the substantial improvements and the lookup period. What the staff has proposed is starting January 1 and moving to the 5-year to be consistent with other towns and the state model. And then it would go up incrementally, you know, January 1. So by the time you got to 2030, you'd have your 5-year look back period. And this would be a good compromise for people that already have projects going, that have plans for the next couple of years with the 1-year look back period. And then the terminology for whoever's going to administer the plan, you know, probably adding the floodplain administrator would be a good thing to do in the ordinance. And then the Board of Selectmen can appoint any of the staff to be the floodplain administrator. So in case, you know, the town engineer left or the building official left, whoever was named in the ordinance, you know, and if the replacement didn't have the right qualifications to do the job, it wouldn't be an issue. You could just appoint somebody else. So, and then the base flood elevation. So right now we're going with the state recommendation of 1 foot, but you guys can debate about if you want to go with the extra foot and go to 2 foot.
And I think that what we'll lay out in the perhaps in a memo prior to the special meeting, these issues, the policy issues, you know, so that we can have a robust conversation with refreshing ourselves on what they are. And also, you know, the staff, I think, has, you know, really worked hard on the verbiage more and how it, you know, just readability, you know, transparency of the ordinance, because I think there was a lot of like vagueness and confusion with the previous ordinance. So they've done a great job with that, and you'll get ahead of time their draft also. So you'll have a lot of information to have a good discussion, you know, and we could, if we wanted, at the same special meeting, also address short-term rentals. There's a lot of similar faces that show up to both meetings. And
let's
so
not get crazy now, Peggy.
Well, to be honest, though, I'm kind of, you know, it does help coalesce a discussion about our, you know, our coastal zones, right? And, you know, both issues do impact both of those. One is requesting more regulation and one is requesting less regulation. So I think it's kind of an interesting perspective, but at the same point, it does impact the same area. So we don't have to do that, but I just thought it would be very efficient if we did that. So with that, I think if everybody's comfortable with that, we can schedule the special meeting. And you'll have the materials several days in advance to review.
So I think that's a great idea. And I think I'm with Scott. I at least in this first meeting, I wouldn't confuse the two. I would just have us focused on the FPO. As part of the background material for that, on the refresher, if we could have some explanation of the Venn diagram of the federal regulations and the state building code, because they are adjacent but not the same thing. So just clarifying the roles of the federal regulations and the state building code would be good, and how it impacts our ordinance. And then the other thing would be if we could get projections of the floodplain changes over the next 10 years, because the decisions that we're making today are probably going to impact neighborhoods that are not currently impacted by this. And I think we want to consider that in our decision and policy setting.
Oh, you mean in terms of like the town maps, the flood maps?
Right. So there are models out there where you can put in base assumptions for flooding, and it will color the different portions of town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps us understand the areas that are impacted, and I think some of them will probably be surprising.
It might be worth having, Joe McDougall do that kind of quick overview again about why this is so important. Because I know it was several years ago. I think he did it to the original commission, right? It was probably prior to when I've been sitting here.
It was.
And they do the maps. And so maybe I'll chat with him to do kind of an abbreviated version of summarizing why this is so important and why we need to be forward thinking in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I want to come back to, all of the public feedback that we received in this process too. I just, as I was sort of chairing the process, in the past, I think we did receive a fair amount of public sentiment, with regard to the 5-year look back. And I think there's going to be a lot of conversation and concern about that. So I guess, in our special meeting, if we could spend, a decent amount of time just understanding the logic of the 5-year look back, because there is a potential harm to homeowners as well. And I think there's a lot of concern out there about, what do I need to do? And can I stay in my home if this look back is put in place? So I just want to ensure that we're being smart and that we're listening to the public sentiment as well. Not to suggest that the draft that was put in place is not smart, because I know Sam is very smart.
No, well, but I will say, I think that I don't think the staff was necessarily recommending the 5-year look back. I mean, that is the direction that most communities are going in. But I think the thought, if the board wants a 5-year look back, then there's a way they were recommending we could get there, rather than just dropping a bomb like next year. You ease yourself into the 5-year look back. So the staff is just proposing solutions, I guess. But in some of these, but I think some of these key policy areas obviously are what the board is supposed to be debating. And they're saying if we're going to do a 5-year look back, there's a way to ease us into it. So
the state model has the 5-year look back.
Yeah, and the state.
Yeah. No, we definitely discussed that ad nauseum. So, and I know there was just a lot of pushback, Sam, on the 5-year look back. So
I get it.
Yeah.
I think that what's proposed is a pretty good compromise. It gives people time to finish up their projects that they have planned out for the next couple of years. And then the look back period wouldn't start till, I think, January 1st of 2025. And then it would go up incrementally. So it wouldn't go back immediately, would start 2026 should have a 2-year look back period. 2027 to be 3 years, and so on and so forth. So really, you could get to 2030 by the time you look back to 5 years or 2020 or something like that.
So it's a good way to ease into it without, so that current homeowners and people that have projects in place aren't kind of
Penalized, yeah.
get penalized, exactly. And it also gives a clear roadmap for new people moving to town that are starting projects. So they have an idea of the timeline that they have to work under, and maybe they should just, try to meet the new standards. But
I just think, again, just public sentiment. I would love to see a little bit of an understanding of what our surrounding shoreline towns are doing as well. I just want to be conscious of that, because this could potentially be a big impact to homeowners. So I want to be smart about this.
And they've, I know Aaron had put together a whole survey, so there's a lot of good information that'll be part of the discussion. When we have the meeting, so there'll be background information too.
Yep, great, thank you.
Okay, so we'll get that scheduled for the next couple of weeks. Jacqueline will reach out on that. And then we can just kind of move it forward. I think we have that meeting, then we have another follow-up where we send a draft to public hearing, and then we can finalize it. I mean, ideally, we could have this done by the end of the year. If, that would be good to get things moving in that direction. And that's it on the agenda. So any other I guess we can move on to citizens' comments.
No hands are raised.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Move
Have
to
a good
adjourn.
day. All right. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Wow, that was a record. See you
Wait till the
guys.
meeting, right?